Before we get into this trailer comparison, I'd just like to say that I'm going to be focusing a bit more on my writing, hopefully in the next couple of months, as long as big old father writer's block doesn't smack me in the face.
You punched me in the face?
So don't be surprised if there's a slight downtick in videos. I am going to be going ahead and posting chapter 1 of my next book, Better Dead, on Patreon today. So if you'd like to get a sneak peek at what I'm doing next, go ahead and head on over to Patreon. You can read that for just $1 and see future chapter posts I should be doing in the next few weeks. This third series is the one I'm going to be trying to take to trad. So I'll have my indie series, my hybrid series, and my trad series. And the financial breakdown of the hybrid series I did for the indie one should be coming soon so that we can finish off this trilogy in the next couple of years and provide full transparency on all the different publishing processi now into the dichotomy of Season 2 trailers. 3 trailers have dropped in the last week, all of them coincidentally being prequels to series' main era. Rings of Power, of course, is the age before the main Lord of the Rings story, House of the Dragon is the same for Westeros, and Dune Prophecy takes place for a similar setup for the wider Dune series. We're not going to be talking about that third one though, because I'd like to simplify and talk about what has worked for House of Dragon and why the Rings of Power trailer is being so poorly received. The big, obnoxious, gas-belting elephant in the room, though, is no, I'm not one of these people who, culture vulture's not the right word because being a fantasy fan isn't a culture, but content creators who show up specifically just when something looks kind of shaky to try and make a quick buck making it about, I don't know, black people or whatever those right-wing losers do. Instead, I love speculative fiction. I live and breathe this shit. And it's always interesting to me to break down why certain adaptations are successful where others fail. And trailers are lies, but they are certainly lies you can look into to try and assess where a show might be trying to step for its next entry. And with both of these being season 2s, the approach in marketing alone is fascinating in how different it is.
Late night editing Daniel here, dealing with what he thought was a catastrophe, but turns out to be a whole lot of nothing and just an excuse to angrily rant. Because as it was pointed out to me by a friend of the channel, Nerd of the Rings, one of these is labeled a teaser and the other full-length trailer. But I wasn't entirely sure what the distinction between these two was, and this definition certainly doesn't seem to be followed, so I decided to watch a whole bunch of recent teaser trailers versus trailers for Fallout, the original House of the Dragon teaser trailer, which is actually fairly plot-focused as well, the teaser trailer for If, the teaser trailer for so many things from all kinds of different streamers, as well as full-length trailers that seem to give away less than many of the teasers. So what is the actual difference between a teaser trailer and a trailer now that streaming and TikTok and social media apps now have need for all kinds of different cuts of these things? And essentially nothing. There's no difference. And it's just an excuse to release 2 trailers. So I think I'm safe and good. But if you have a problem with that, that's totally fine and I understand. Just full disclosuring it, I'm tired of watching trailers now.
Getting into the more positive of the two first, I want to talk about House of the Dragon Season 2 because this is not a perfect trailer for a Season 2, but without question, it's an enticing one. The first success of the House of the Dragon Season 2 trailer is its focus on narrative. Even the opening words for this trailer speak about how a Targaryen on the throne is a protector for all, which can be taken multiple ways with what we know from Season 1. Either, oh yes, we support Team Black, and this is the side of good, but then you remember who these people are, and suddenly those words get undercut with a much darker tinge, and the visuals complement that as well, with us seeing giant dragons and their fire.
A Targaryen who sits the Iron Throne is not just a king or a queen. They are a protector of the realm.
As well as the actual throne with thunder illuminating it in the background. Even if you did not see Season 1, this setup is immediately inviting more questions. This is followed up with more words from Emma Darcy talking about being stuck in an impossible situation.
Now I find myself in an impossible position. The enemy usurped my throne.
And what happens when 2 conflicting powers see no resolution to their conflicts? Bloodshed and death. There's a promise from Matt Smith that he's going to King's Landing before immediately cutting to seeing House Green, the other side.
We're going to King's Landing.
A cocky king points with a knife before being advised to proceed with caution.
What are we going to do about it?
We must play the board before us.
Proceed cautiously.
dignity.
retaliating with that he is seeking revenge.
I want revenge.
It's not nuanced or subtle, but this is a trailer, and it's doing its assignment to a T. The next leg of the trailer is filled with intense action shots, showing the conflict we were just informed about is going to have direct consequences in this season, and if you are here for the big action dragon, you're probably going to be satisfied. Hightower then promises the young, arrogant king that houses will come to his side as word spreads of the conflict. But again, the conflict is enhanced as we see not all houses are aligning behind this king, and House Black is gathering its forces.
My ships sail at your command.
If you've seen season 1, you're aware they're starting this conflict with the advantage of more and greater dragons, but even if you are unaware of that, the trailer has an emphasis on armies for House Green, with the dragons then being emphasized on Black. The confidence on the Black side is also emphasized, with Matt Smith delivering the line,
I did not think they would be so eager to die.
again, not nuanced, but in terms of, whew, that's whew. But finally adding the last bit of balance between these two conflicts, showing the cracks mirror each other, we saw a confident king is conflicting with his inner circle, and here we see Rhaenyra then question Daemon's ability to kneel to her authority.
Do you accept me as your queen and ruler?
The last leg of the trailer is finished off with more cryptic lines about internal conflict, betrayal, and the flaws within us driving these external conflicts. We see flashes of dragonfire, mobs trying to attack House Green, and, of course, the trademark Game of Thrones successor. All of it remarkably well shot. There's some weaker visuals in terms of people riding dragons, but overall the armies have just this unrelenting, yes, continued all these seasons later, grit and weight to them that Westeros is known for in terms of its live action adaptations. By no means is this the greatest trailer ever, but it does the assignment. It continues on from the conflicts established in season 1, does just enough explaining with promises of tantalizing drama yet to come, and proving and showcasing without spoiling too much the violence we as sick, depraved fans of Westeros all crave and enjoy. And that violence seems to be just as potent as ever, whether it's small or large, internal or external. And the deciding factor for me to make this video in lieu of fantasy news today, aside from it just being a bit of a slow news week, is that they dropped this within an hour of Prime putting out their Rings of Power Season 2 trailer. No, I'm not trying to say this is necessarily some Kendrick Drake-esque let's drop Meet the Grams type move, but for us the fans, it does seem to invite greater levels of comparison, and that's why I want to talk about how, yes, in comparison especially, Rings of Power Seasons 2 trailer fails on nearly every level for me personally. As it has already been said by 1,000 different critics in 1,000 different ways, Rings of Power Season 1 suffered from largely just being kind of boring emotionally, not having these standout characters that hit on a Matt Smith, Emma Darcy level, and instead tried to rely on spectacle over everything else. You show up because it's Middle-earth in the Second Age, isn't that cool? And I want to reiterate, I hope Season 2 of Rings of Power corrects course from that. I hope this is just a kind of bad trailer and I'm able to give a glowing review of Rings of Power Season 2. I don't necessarily believe that'll be the case, but as a fan, that is what I am always rooting for. This trailer just didn't make me feel very confident in that. Let me get into why. The actual opening shot is immediately about a striking visual. Not necessarily bad, but this is then continued up by essentially nothing but that. A cloaked figure walks towards Mount Doom, presumably Sauron, who we know is headed in this direction due to the ending of Season 1 and the over-explanatory title cards that season insisted upon. We then get shots of Sauron after hitting a joint a bit too hard, and a rather well-delivered grandiose speech about evil returning. But this is followed up again by just more shots that, without context, I'm not really sure how to take. What looks exactly to be a Venom symbiote is climbing up a out-of-focus dirt hill. Our elves seem to encounter some form of threat in fog, but this is just transformed into a hero shot without much context. Before we got to sinister bleeding palm magic, followed up by an interesting swirl flutter of magically directed what looks to be insects. The most successful part of this trailer, and where I do want to give a compliment, is I love that we are getting some of these more sinister shots right when a monologue begins about how Sauron worms his way into your mind.
Way inside your mind. A rest of him slithers in.
Okay, we're getting some actual direction here at the very tail end of the first leg of the trailer rather than right at the beginning. All right, we have a threat. It's Sauron. Sauron is our big threat for this season and his psychological games. That's great. I really wanted Rings of Power to be about a mysterious Dark Lord character who is manipulating in a way that's going to be magnificent once it's unveiled and make rewatching the show and witnessing that manipulation a true joy. Do I think we're going to get that? Well, the next leg of the trailer shows Sauron's forces marching in the woods before a gateway opens before Celebrimbor. And before we get our final reveal of Sauron as a threat in this season, the words, "I'm afraid he's been here all along," echo in the trailer. Effective.
I think he's been here among us all along.
And then we cut to the wig. It's Sauron in a wig. That's the threat. That's the big thing. Being fully fair, this is striking me as what we're going to be seeing in like possible flashbacks for how Sauron's been setting up his chess pieces. I don't think this is how he's going to be operating throughout the season as he's going into Mordor, and that's his actual like current momentum. I could be wrong there though. I do not know. After this one reveal, everything is kind of distracted, relying on threats that aren't a part of what this trailer's big focus was just set up for us to be. We see action shots of characters who we don't really know their commitment to this fight even if you watch season 1, before out of context big monster underwater is just here to hope that catches your attention. There's more blanket out of context destruction followed up by a mob scene, which I can't help but immediately compare to the one in House of the Dragon, where we saw members of House Green, who we know the approval of the people is very important to their stability. It adds to the actual context and narrative versus just, oh, I guess that soldier guy ends up in a mob at some point reaching for something. It doesn't have meaning. Will say, do enjoy the look of the orc we get licking a knife. I always enjoy some over-the-top scene-chewing level orc. That's where Peter Jackson really probably succeeded even the strongest with his orcs, is how much attitude he gave them, and I'm glad Rings of Power is trying to continue that with practical effects. But this is followed up with just darkness will bind them. And yeah, we're just gonna be leading into the Lord of the Rings kind of hope. And okay, yeah, they're all gonna come together to fight Sauron. That's the big message. More action shots followed up by the Dwarf King picking up a ring, because you know rings and Rings of Power are going to have significance. Well, I was saying House of the Dragon isn't exactly nuanced. There's a difference between, hey, we're trying to communicate something versus, you know this is important, right? A weaker visual looking eagle arrives to drop off another character we recognize, and with this being Prime, I know they're willing to put unfinished visual effects out as a final for a season, so I hope it's better by the time the show comes out. Even the things around this trailer can make it go down a bit worse. More insert action shots finally lead to Sauron in his elf gear being confronted, presumably for being Sauron.
He's Sauron.
So maybe this is taking place during the season, but with how bad his disguise is, I'd be surprised by that. Really not gonna get like a new actor to play Sauron, the ultimate snake in a different, no, we're just gonna go with the guy in the wig? I'm confused by this. And we get explosion followed up by ominous wintry overtaking and what's presumed to be set up for I won't spoil. And when this trailer first ended to me, my first thought was, that was, again, just spectacle. It doesn't seem to value Tolkien's vision, Tolkien's themes, ideas, everything that, yes, the Middle-earth is loved by fantasy fans because it is deep and a spectacle in itself with rich history, but all of it had purpose. There is specific reasoning behind Tolkien's creation of Middle-earth and what he had to say about industrialization. There's that overused quote from him about allegory, sure, but that doesn't mean he was just writing stories that are not meant to be applied anywhere. Part of the reason I think Lord of the Rings has held up so well for nearly a century now is that yes, it wasn't directly allegorical, yet instead made sure that its ideas were widely applicable yet calculated. On the other hand, this felt like a Marvel trailer to me. You have your big bad guy. Oh, he's back, sinister, and we're gonna team up to go against him. That's a Marvel trailer. And no hate to Marvel trailers, there have been great versions of those, but I don't find that to be the appropriate approach to marketing what is supposed to be Middle-earth. It once again feels like just trying to take a source material and transform it into something else to hopefully reach maximum commercial success. Tolkien used his fantastical elements, reaches of human imagination to examine not only the world he lived in, but convey complex human emotions that sometimes without the impossible are inexplicable. Right and wrong, good and bad are clearly distinct in Middle-earth, but have nuance. There are failures to man and elves and dwarves. While Sauron's attempt to preserve the old ways, while is based in certainly evil, absolutely has justification and momentum behind it. Zero of that's here. Meanwhile, House of the Dragon is thriving by remaining gritty, humanly motivated, and understanding in its conflicts while having dragons burn armies. Yes, there is a spectacle to be had, but it's a payoff to a primary human story based in politics you can understand, with deeply flawed people who may be worse than anyone you've met in your real life, but still echo of the worst you've met in your real life. With these two coming out just so close to each other, it just seemed worth talking about to me because I'm loving House of the Dragon. I'm rooting for Rings of Power. But these two trailers, in terms of what audience wanted and expected, you're kind of seeing the end result. Fuck culture war bullshit. This is about telling good stories. One is succeeding and the other is struggling. One seems to have faith its audience will be interested in a complex conflict with many moving parts and understand that without reason, spectacle is just spectacle. While the other is hoping that you're in love with this world enough that if they just give you fan service for certain moments, you're willing to kind of fill in gaps they haven't really been bothered for to improve what has been presented to us as a remarkably basic conflict and an interpretation of Sauron that I'm confident in saying is so far fairly disappointing.
That Sauron lives because of you!
And you will die because of me!
And I hope months from now, I'm wrong in saying that. I always want to give shows at least a season 2, if not a season 3, to find their footing as a huge fan of TNG. Hates season 1, gets great from there. But I just hope this has been a reasonable replacement for fantasy news during a slow news week. If you'd like this to never happen again, just join the Discord server and go ahead and post any news you'd like to see covered next week in the Fantasy News channel. Now, I do want to still absolutely give a shout out to a book written and published by a member of the Goblin Horde this week. But before we do that, I have 2 ongoing charity projects, and I'm happy to say for the one where you all are going to help decide my next tattoo, currently ML Wong is in the lead to help decide what next ink gets put on my body. But if you would like to be a part of the voting process, maybe sway it over to Nerdforge, Man Carrying Thing, Bryce, Pierce Brown, go ahead and just click the link of the card that's on screen now, and you can see how we're using my body and tattooing it to help homeless children. I also have an ongoing Kickstarter right now for the definitive edition of The Lawful Times, which I will again be donating all of my proceeds to charity with. That will be linked down below. And now, a book written by one of you all.
And today's Indie Pub promo is The Diamond Device by M.H. Thong. Pitched as a steampunk romp where mismatched buddies race to foil a bomb plot. After Diamond Power promises to replace steam, an unemployed laborer and a thieving noble unite to foil an international plot and avert a war. Alf Wilson resents the new technology that cost him his factory job, especially as his clockwork leg bars him from the army enrollment. He daren't confess his unemployment to his overbearing mother. Desperate over the rent, he ends up in a detention cell with a hangover. Impoverished Lord Richard Hayes maintains his expensive parliamentary seat by a mixture of charm and burglary. During a poorly planned break-in, he inadvertently witnesses a kidnapping. To cap it all, the police arrest him for the crime. When Rich encounters Alf in the neighboring cell, he sees an opportunity to keep his noble reputation intact. He persuades Alf he's a secret agent who needs an assistant. But law-abiding Alf's first assignment, break Rich out of jail.
Like and subscribe if you have not already. Hit the Patreon if you want to support what I do here. And have a good one, y'all. Peace. And of course, I'd like to record a special shout out to my latest high tier Patreons, Tom Wright and Sean Thibodeau.